Hi, this is Dave Redder. About 30 years ago, a fellow named Charles Petzold wrote a book titled Programming Windows. And in there, he had a section, I think it was called The Dialog Box That Ate Cincinnati. And that's kind of like the thing that you're looking at right here on the screen. And in fact, that's what I did this for, is designed after that. The idea is that what we're going to do today is talk about the various controls that you can put on a form by simply creating a blank form and just dropping a whole boatload of controls on there. And that's what this is. This is an application that has just a bunch of different controls on it. And we're going to talk about each one of those briefly. This is a great way to learn about controls in general and how they relate to the form. So when you start an app, what you end up doing is putting various controls on there to let the user interact with your application. So what I've done is restrict the controls that we're going to talk about by selecting this in the toolbox, selecting this common controls. If you look at all Windows Forms controls, you're going to see there's a bunch more of them. But this is too many to do as a tutorial, and it's too many to try to memorize or try to understand all at one time. These that we have here are easy to understand. We're going to go through them. I'll describe them briefly. So the first one here is the pointer, and that just means that you have the pointer icon and you get to drag things around with it. It's the standard one that you've got. So this isn't really a control, but you're in pointer mode and you can adjust things by moving things around like you see there. The second one is the button. We've already dealt with the button in the Hello World. What I want to do is use this very quickly to describe what the button does. We know that the button has some properties, and let's take a quick look at all these properties. And I'd highly recommend that you do this kind of thing, to just write down, go right down through these properties and see if you can make sense of them. Don't worry about it if you don't get it, and you'll get those later. But these are values that represent the size, the shape, the color of the button, the font size, all of those kinds of things that have to do with the button. If you want to do something interesting with a button, there's probably something down in here that will help you do that. There are really three pieces of things that go with these controls. There's the first one. The second one is the events. And these are all events that can be trapped. You can react to these things happening. All of these things are events that happen regarding the button. And if you want to react to one of those, all you have to do is have the button over here and double click in this area, say for mouse move. I'm not going to do that right now, but we'll have some other times where we do many of these different kinds of things and you'll get a feeling for it. But I think it's a good idea for you just to read down through these things: control added, control remove, cursor change, dock change, drag drop, and just have those things. Your brain is amazing about being able to recall things. You say, I think there was an event that might help me there. There's another button here, and this button has nothing to do with these kinds of buttons. But this thing right here changes the way this information is displayed to you. In this case, we are at the properties, and this thing right here is the categorized view versus the alphabetical view. And then this is the properties, and this is the events. So if I've got a categorized view selected, I'll get my properties categorized, as you can see here, and my events categorized as well. What we know how to do with buttons is we can handle that click event. We can change the name of the button. The click event handler will allow us to create a method that we're going to do when we click it. We're going to do any of that stuff in this video. Not very much of that stuff. But you need to be able to go through all of these guys and kind of see what they do. So that's what I'm going to do. Checkbox, that's this guy right here. And when you click on it, it checks that box. Or if it's unchecked, it checks it. If it's checked, it unchecks it. Here's a checked list box. It's a list box that has check marks in it. Let me show you that thing working. Here we've got the list box, and I can select that, and then I can check it. Or I can double click on the check or the check box. And I can do that again and uncheck it. So as you can see, we have a special kind of a list box, and you can decide which of these items are checked and which are not in the code. This one up here, we can simply click on this, and as you can see, the button is being pressed and released, but we haven't got a click event handler. So let's go back and look at some more of these. The next one is the combo box, and a combo box is a box that has two pieces. It's got a text box associated with it, and it's got a drop-down box. So this is a text box, and this is a list box. And it's like a list box, like this guy here. This is just a plain old list box. So a text box with a list box, and the text box contains the string that represents the item that you've selected. And that's very carefully chosen wording. It's not the item you've selected necessarily. It's a string that describes the item you've selected, and that string is something you have full control over in some really neat ways that you'll see later in the course. This is a numeric up-down box. We can click on that and increase the value. We can click on this, decrease the value. We can specify minimum and maximum values, and we can change a few other things as you can find by looking at the information. This is about the combo box, but you select this box and then come over here and look at its properties and its events. Then you'll get an idea about the things that you can do. This is a date picker box. When we click on the drop-down box, we get a calendar, so we can pick that date and we can select a date that way, and it will show that date in the text portion of this date picker box. This is a picture box, which we'll come back and look at here in a little bit. This, as I said, is a list box. This is a list view, which is a configurable list box. So what I'm going to do now is drag this over here and go over the top of that, this control right here. And this is a link label, it's called. I'm going to click on that, and it opens this up and gives us that. So let me go to this little place right here, Village of Ada, and it wants me to sign in, but that's okay. And I'm going to come here and click on this, and you'll see that it opened up a new window. There's the other one that I just had, but it opened up a new window with Google, and I'll show you how that one works here in just a few minutes. This guy right here is a progress bar. This is simply a text box as you're used to, but there's something special I'll show you about the text box as well. Radio buttons are usually grouped together so that you can have only one of the group active at a time. This is a calendar box, and this is a special kind of a box, text box, that allows you to specify a format for data entry. So we've got a lot of different kind of boxes here. This one right here is a rich text box, which allows us to do some formatting. Rich text is a little bit toward going to Microsoft Word or something like that, but not nearly as powerful. But you can do some formatting with it, unlike the business with a text box. You'll see this is a text box. I want to show you one thing about it. There's a place down here that says, oh, I want it to be this way. There's a place down here that says multi-line. You'll notice that there are handles here to size that text box, but they're only on the ends. And that's because you can only have one line of values in the text box, unless, of course, you pick multi-line. And when you do that, notice that you can control height and width, and you've got these corner guys even that allow you to control two of them at once. So now we can type multiple lines of text in this text box. So it acts a little bit more like a rich text box in that feature, the multi-line, but it doesn't provide you the formatting capabilities. So I'm going to change that back to false by double clicking in the multi-line value column. Notice that it sets it right back to where it was before. So as you can see, we've got all of these guys that are in here except for the web browser, which we'll look at separately in just a few minutes. You are aware of these. Let's take a look at the numeric up-down box. It's got up-down alignment. It's got, we can change it to left, noticing that that changes this over to here. All kinds of values. I highly recommend that you play with each one of these. Go change some properties and see what it does. We have the minimum and maximum values that we can have, and those are all useful values. This picture box is a different kind of box. This one has this picture of Godzilla eating Cincinnati just because of Charles Petzold's The Dialogue That Ate Cincinnati. Now, this one's a little bit different. You'll see that there's this thing called size mode here, and you can pick whichever one you want: normal, stretch, auto, center image, or zoom. If I pick stretch image, you'll see that I get that whole picture. Those are some of the controls. I highly recommend that you go through those controls and play with them. And I'll put this code out there so you can see, but there's really not much to see right now. You'll notice also a couple of other things. Here's a tooltip and a notify icon. We'll talk about these later. These are actually controls. Here's the tooltip control, and here's the notify icon control. And these are names for controls that I've added. And what this allows us to do is to have controls that don't have any UI, no user interface, no graphical user interface value or image that goes with them. So these have the same kind of status as these controls. It's just that there's no way to present them. And you might have noticed earlier in this video that hovering over this one, it pops up this tooltip. And I was using the two of those together. And I'm going to leave those to you for now. It's kind of fun to try and figure out if you can learn how to do it on your own. And if you can't, it's not a big deal. And we'll talk about those later anyway. So hopefully this is of value to you. I hope you're having a good time with this series of videos. And I look forward to talking with you again in the near future.